Well, I did something that I told myself I was absolutely not going to do under any circumstances. I told myself that I would not be buying Midnight Sun, and lo and behold, I did buy Midnight Sun. A month late, everybody else bought it and reviewed it back in August, but I'm here now, and I really enjoyed it. I read it in 2 days. It was so good. So, first and foremost, a little bit of background. It was supposed to come out basically immediately after Breaking Dawn, but somebody leaked the pages that she was supposed to be sending to her editor or something, and she tabled the project for literally 12 years, for so long. And we finally got it. It came out last month, and it is such a blast. First of all, the first Twilight book was, I believe, 114,000 words, which is so long for a debut YA novel. This book is even longer. It's two of that plus a little bit. I believe it was 250,000 words, coming in right at about 700 pages. So this was a behemoth book. But it really only dragged in a couple of places, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit as we start digging in here. Similarly to Twilight, Midnight Sun is told from a first-person perspective, just instead of Bella. This time it's being told from Edward's perspective, which means that we get a little bit more focus on his relationship with his family, each of his individual siblings, which we really didn't get in the original Twilight saga, as well as his relationship with, like, the Denali Coven, and different characters that Bella was friends with that he didn't necessarily like. It is a whole new thing. It is so cool. That said, the opening scene was really boring. So the opening scene is the Cullens sitting alone at their lunch table during one of the first days of school. Edward is sitting at his table with his family, but instead of kind of tuning into what they're saying, he's kind of jumping from mind to mind to mind in the cafeteria, listening in on the hot gossip about the new girl Bella Swan, who, number one, he doesn't care about, and number two, the people whose minds he keeps jumping into, he continues to talk about how vapid and boring they are. Why aren't you talking to your family? I'm sure they're more interesting than these 16-year-old kids that you're trying to eavesdrop on. But that's beside the point. During his mind hopping, we do find out that he's not a huge fan of his sister Rosalie. He thinks that she's shallow and vapid because every time that he looks into her mind, she's just thinking about, like, how beautiful she is, how wonderful she is. And first of all, I call that confidence and, like, good on you, girl. I do prescribe to the fan theory that Rosalie kind of dampens her thoughts and makes herself seem vapid around Edward so that he can't read, like, her deepest, most inner thoughts. Because that has been used before as kind of plot devices. I think Alice, in maybe the fourth book, was going through, like, the Russian alphabet in her head or something in order to keep Edward from eavesdropping on her thoughts. I like to think that this is the same thing that Rosalie's doing. Smart girl. Even though there's nothing to support that in the text. At this point, Twilight is basically 50% fan theory, 50% canon. So this is what I'm going with. In the same chapter, we also find out that Jessica, who looks in Twilight to be one of Bella's best friends, actually is not a huge fan of Bella. She's just kind of sticking to her because, you know, like in small towns, how you kind of just glom on to the new kid. The excitement and shine of having a new kid in your group kind of is like kind of shines the light on you too. I have a little bit of a feeling that that is what they were getting at here. She does not like Bella, and in exchange, Edward does not like her. There are two people in Bella's friend group that Edward just does not like, and one of them is Jessica, and the other one is Mike Newton. Edward spends, I swear to God, the first third of this book just shitting on Mike Newton, and it is the funniest thing. There were some lines that were just laugh out loud funny. And I should point out that in this point in the book, Edward does not like Bella. He straight up says that she is not pretty, that her face is oblong and unexpected. But for some reason, he's still protective of her, and he doesn't like that Mike Newton is having lewd thoughts about her. It's so bizarre and I love it. At the end of this scene, Edward and Bella have a weird little like staring match. She blushes, he notices, it's a whole thing. Then the bell rings, they go to science class. It's the scene in the movie where like the fan blows her hair and he's like, oh god, oh the horror.
How long till you catch up? All right guys, today we are going to be observing.
It's easily picked up on in Twilight that Bella thinks that he's just very rude. As we see in his perspective, he's running through about 5 scenarios in this scene. It's legitimately about 50 pages long, where he's going through scenario after scenario of how best to kill Bella Swan. It's not an immediate attraction, immediate, like, love story like you think it is. This first scene is legitimately him planning her death. He's looking around the room thinking, oh crap, there are about 25 people here. I gotta kill all of them if I'm going to have at this girl. Or if I can hold off until after class, I may be able to get her in the woods where nobody will see me. And he's basically just going through all of these things in his head until the bell rings, and then he dashes out of there because at the end of the day he realizes that he doesn't want to upset Carlisle and Esme, and he doesn't want to have to uproot his family, and that is literally the one thing that keeps him from tearing an entire classroom of people to shreds. So good. I love a good murder plot. After he realizes that he would do just about anything to get to and kill this girl, he goes to one of his brothers, he goes to Emmett, and he very much just kind of divulges everything. I want to kill her, but I know I shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. And Emmett is such a bro. Oh my gosh. It's so funny because there are several instances where, like, Edward will say, oh, I just want to kill her. And he's like, okay, then kill her. We'll just move. It's fine. And then once Edward kind of flips towards the middle of the book to, oh, I love her, I can't kill her, Emmett is very much in the boat of, yeah, you can't kill her, we need to do everything we can to protect her. He's such a bro. He is ride or die Team Edward no matter what. I love that relationship so much. For a conversation with Emmett and Carlisle and a couple of others, Edward decides that he needs to get in his car and go to Alaska to the Denali clan to kind of just cool off for a few days. And that's exactly what he does. And while he's there, Tanya, one of the Denali sisters, kind of runs into him after a day or two and is like, so is this gonna happen? And he's like, no. And that's the whole reason that she's in the book. I don't know why they I really don't know why they put her in the book. This is a good point in time to point out that there were several scenes in this book that I think an editor probably should have told Stephanie to cut to whittle down the page count. So instead of 700 pages, if we just whittle down this scene and a scene that I'm going to mention later on, which is frankly one of my favorite scenes, but one of the most unnecessary things in the world, if we had taken out those 2 scenes, this book could have easily gotten down to 600 pages, which is much more doable than the 700 that this book is now. After Edward gets back from Alaska, they have a second science class together. And this is the science class where they're like sharing the blood samples and they're like, prophase, anaphase, no, you're wrong, yes, I'm right, that whole thing. It's very cute. Edward is pretty proud of himself because he gets through the whole class and he's like, wow, I did that, good for me. Good, I can manage myself, I did that, I didn't kill anyone, good for me. Meanwhile, we find out a couple pages later that Alice had a premonition that during that class, Edward's about to literally murder everyone in the classroom yet again. So she gets up out of her class and is like booking it across campus to the science lab, only to find out that everything's fine. So like, primo, good for them. Not much of note happens after that up to the point of the car crash. The car crash scene was, I mean, it was the turning point of Twilight. It was everybody's favorite, but it was one of my favorite scenes in Twilight. I thought it was so fun. And it was really well depicted in this book. I think it was fleshed out really well. And one bit that we got in this book that we did not get in Twilight is that the reason Edward knew that he needed to go to Bella's side is because Alice has the premonition of Tyler's van hitting the ice, getting towards Bella like a split second before it happens. She turns to Edward. He goes, okay, I understand. sprints to Bella. He gets there just in the nick of time. She hit her head, and now he sees that her legs are about to be crushed, and he's juggling about 6 different components here, and she doesn't realize until after the fact, like, how bizarre it is that he was able to keep a car from landing on her legs. She ends up going to the hospital. I think she gets some stitches or like a cold compress or something. This is the point where he realizes that she's not going to give up. She wants to know what's going on, and she knows that this is not normal. And that's also the point at which his family decides that this is the breaking point. It's gone too far, this infatuation with this girl. She needs to be taken care of. In the split second after the car crash, Jasper and Rosalie both decide that this girl knows too much. We're gonna kill her in the night. That leads into the family meeting. The family meeting scene was actually really cool because I liked seeing like who paired off with who, what side they fell on to begin with in regards to, you know, who was not even a fan of Bella, but who kind of supported Edward's interest in Bella and who did not. And as it turns out, the only two who were willing to support Edward's protection of Bella were Carlisle and Alice, and that was because Alice had already seen into the future and she knew what was going to happen. Everybody else, including Esme, which surprised me the most, they all were like, we're gonna kill her. We're gonna kill her tonight. We're gonna fix this. She hit her head really hard. Humans die every day from head injuries. She died from the car crash. That was going to be the plan. And Edward was like formulating in his head, oh my god, I'm gonna have to fight my family. I'm gonna have to really do some serious damage to these people. And it turns out that he doesn't, because Alice basically turns to Jasper, who's kind of spearheading the Kill Bella campaign, and is like, listen, honey, it's really gonna put me out if you kill her, so please don't do that. So he's like, okay. And then the dissenting faction just kind of falls apart because Alice is like, you're not gonna kill her. I love that every conflict in Twilight is handled with words. Like, the penultimate fight in Breaking Dawn was the Cullens and their team, like, talking things out with the Volturi. That's very much what this felt like. It felt like Alice was like, please don't kill her, and then everybody was like, okay. Immediately after that, Alice adds that not only will Edward love Bella, but Alice will too, and they will be girlfriends. And I know the context in which it was meant to be said, but at the same time, I'm gonna choose to interpret this as a WLW ship confirmation. Thank you very much. At some point in the midst of all this, Edward is talking to Emmett, and he's telling him, oh my gosh, there are so many things that can kill this girl. I'm so, like, nervous for her well-being. This could happen, there's disease, there's, I don't know, famine, pestilence, there's so many things that could go wrong. She could be hit by a meteor. And the meteor was what really set him off. So, armed with nothing but WD-40 to make sure the window didn't squeak as he was sneaking in, Edward goes to Bella's house to keep vigil over her as she sleeps, to kill non-poisonous spiders and wait for meteorites that may or may not come. It was so creepy, but his inner goddess keeps telling him, oh, this is right, and trying to justify to him why it's okay for him to literally be watching this girl sleep. Oh, and it's so creepy to me. I hate it so much. I hated it in Twilight. I hate it here. If you remember in Twilight, Bella goes to Port Angeles. She's doing research. She's finally starting to put the pieces together about the whole vampire thing. And she is accosted by these men in the street. And Edward shows up just in the nick of time. And that obviously happens in Midnight Sun as well. However, the part that we didn't get in Twilight is the mention that Edward went to Carlisle and was like, hey, listen to what these guys did to Bella. And then Carlisle is like, oh, don't worry, I got it. And he goes back, drugs this man, and calls the police and leaves an anonymous tip and is like, hey, there is a rapist who you need to pick up and take to prison. Click. What on earth? It was oh so weird, but so good. This brings me to my second favorite scene of the entire book that was utterly, utterly unnecessary and so incredibly weird, but I really enjoyed it. And this is the scene where Edward decides that because Angela is such a good and wholesome friend to Bella, he is going to find her a boyfriend. And honestly, this scene solidify for me in my mind the realization that whatever age you're turned at is the mental maturity that you remain at for the rest of your life as a vampire. Because nobody in their right mind would do that as an adult. Oh my gosh. And like, in so many people's heads, they imagine that, oh, he is, 100 years old. He must be so mature. But I don't know a single adult who would be like, my girlfriend's friend is awfully friendly to my girlfriend. I'm gonna give her a reward and find her a boyfriend. So what he does is he enlists the help of his brother Emmett again. What a bro. And what they do is they go up to this boy, Ben Chaney, and they like lean against the lockers, and Edward basically is just talking, you know what I mean, talking basically at Ben, but over Emmett's shoulder and being like, Angela is so pretty. I have such a crush on Angela. I think I will ask her out. And in doing so, he hopes that this will cause Ben Chaney to ask Angela out. It's so bizarre. Why? Why is that the thing? It was so out of place and so bizarre, and that's honestly the only reason it was my favorite scene. I was like, wow, this is not a part of this character that we have ever seen before. Hell yeah. Okay, so in the course of this video, it's gone from being perfectly bright outside and me having wonderful natural light from these huge windows right here to it being 10 o'clock at night and pitch black, and now I'm shooting by the light of 3 flashlights. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and finish this quickly so that we don't have to dwell on the terrible video quality that we're getting right now. So, after Port Angeles, things kind of start to get more like what you would consider quintessentially Twilight. It's just them falling in love and being cute, underscored by Edward's inner goddess that seemingly never shuts up. However, things do kind of take a turn when Edward and Alice are kind of going through his future and she hits a block, kind of I think they referred to it as a knot, and this knot is what we all know to be the meadow scene, and she can't see past that point. So whatever happens there determines the future. So basically, in the meadow, there's a 50-50 chance he's either gonna kill her or not kill her. Like those are the two options. He's either gonna kill her or they're gonna have a great day. It is funny seeing it in the Twilight book versus in Midnight Sun from Edward's perspective, and seeing that she was having a good old time and loving like how carefree he was being, and lo and behold, we find out in Midnight Sun that he's actually like bricks because he's mortified that something's gonna happen and it's just gonna flip a switch at him, and she will be no more, you know? And as it turns out, that does not happen, and they have a wonderful time in the meadow, and then Alice can start seeing the future again. After that, it's more of the same old Twilight, you know, it's Twilight. It's a love story. The next thing of note that I wanted to talk about was the baseball scene, because, first of all, I think the baseball scene is like everybody's favorite scene. It's a scene that even if you don't love it, you love to hate on it. And the fun part of the baseball scene is when Victoria, Laurent, and James show up, and, you know, the Cullens and this other clan are like, you remember that part where they're like hissing at each other like cats? Yeah, during that part, I had forgotten that Jasper had like a special ability too, and his ability is to like amplify and decrease certain emotions and awarenesses. So during that whole time, he was kind of pulling back on the awareness of the fact that Bella was a human and pushing forward, like, look at how scary Emmett and Edward are, look at how beautiful Rosalie is. Those were the things that he was pushing forward and emanating and said, focus on this, focus on this. That was interesting. That was something that I had completely, either I had forgotten or I had just never known in the first place. But it added this whole new just level to the baseball scene, knowing that there was this underlying thing that was happening. It was so good. After they disperse, James is on the hunt. They decide to take Bella to Phoenix, and I just assumed that in order for them to like get to Phoenix, they did like that treadmill run like they do in the first Twilight movie. But that was not the case. There was a solid 50 pages about the Cullens like stealing a car, getting in a high-speed chase with the cops, getting in like a 10-car pileup, and then Carlisle drugging another person to make it look like it was their fault. Yet again, another one of those things that you would just never think, it wasn't a plot hole or anything like that, because you just assume that they ran there. They're very fast creatures. But I really liked that there was a little difference there. Like, they kind of turned it on its head, and this does kind of make more sense, because I'm sure somebody would see it and it would become a huge thing. So it makes sense that they would have to steal cars, but it was so... First of all, it was a really fun scene. It was a very entertaining thing to listen to and read, and it was just something that had never dawned on me before. There was just always this assumption there for me, and I assume others, that they had run there, and they didn't. And that's just one of those things that is a good twist. But aside from that, I was kind of bummed. I was really looking forward to, I know this is gruesome, but I was really, really looking forward to experiencing James's death, because in Twilight, you don't get to experience it because Bella passes out, and obviously it's from Bella's point of view, so she wakes up and he's just gone. And that was always disappointing, that like all of the huge... It's kind of a trend throughout all of the Twilight books and some of the movies that the big threats are eliminated off screen. In the films and in the books, they happen while Bella's unconscious, so you don't get to experience it. You just have to assume that it happens, or somebody or like one of the other characters explains it after the fact. I was really looking forward to experiencing it firsthand, and you don't get to. It's like one paragraph long. It was so disappointing. I didn't realize, I guess I just assumed because it was all the information that we had, that Edward decided upon the disaster that happened at the beginning of New Moon that was when he was going to leave. No, we find out in Midnight Sun that he had intended to leave immediately after this whole debacle with James, but then he started thinking to himself, oh, well, she's injured, I can't leave while she's injured. I need to take her to her prom. We've been talking about prom. That's an experience she has to have. She has to be in a good enough place to be able to get through it, which is a little bit gross. And it just kept going and going and going until eventually he was just waiting for this thing that was like, okay, this is when I have to leave. So that thought was in the back of his mind for months before he ever actually left. And I don't know, I find that kind of gross. I didn't like that so much. I found it an interesting component, but thinking of it like as a person, I think I'd be a little bit miffed, you know? Adding to that the fact that Alice had looked into the future already and told Edward that, you know, if you leave, she will not be in a good place emotionally, mentally, and he just didn't seem to care. He left because he knew better. And it kind of angered me that, or not angered me, but like upset me that that's where we leave it. Other than that, though, I really enjoyed the book. It was very fun. It was very nostalgic. There were only a couple of places where I really thought it dragged, and both of those places were where just the inner goddess, I'm sorry, I keep calling it the inner goddess. I don't know if you all even understand that joke. It's a reference to 50 Shades of Grey, where like Anastasia Steele, she calls her inner monologue her goddess. Edward basically has that exact same thing in Midnight Sun, except he calls it his monster, so I'm just gonna refer to it as his inner goddess because I'm funny, that's why. But yeah, really, the pacing of the book was slow. There were certain things where I got to the point where it had been 20-30 pages of just him monologuing and thinking and reading other people's thoughts, and I just needed some dialogue, and there was none for just like a couple chapters on end, and I found myself kind of skimming instead of actually thoroughly reading, which is a trap that I fall into a lot. And then I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, because you didn't read it thoroughly, you skimmed. I think that if they had cut out 250 pages, which I think is possible with all of the thinking and monologuing that this character did, I think that it would have been much more palatable for people who were DNFing it. I know plenty of people who got to about the 400-page mark and then they were like, I cannot do this anymore. And I do not blame them. I got to that point. I personally, when I get to that point, I want to finish a book like just to spite it, which I know is weird. But if I don't like a book, I keep going and I'm like, maybe I'll get to a good part. Maybe I'll get to a good part. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I'm 2 pages from the end and I'm like, wait, maybe there was no good part. That didn't happen with this book. There were good parts sprinkled throughout, but the parts that were boring were just so boring. In total, I think I would give this book like a 3 out of 5. There were certain elements of the book that I didn't particularly like. For example, Edward seemed to put a certain value on modest women. He seemed to put a certain value on modesty that I don't really think is necessary in YA fiction. I don't know. I just found that, please tell me if you felt differently down in the comments, but I did feel that there was a certain focus on modesty and purity that I wasn't a particular fan of in certain parts. For example, you could tell, I think he actually said while he was inner goddessing for 50 pages that Edward preferred Angela among Bella's friends because she was modest and polite and didn't particularly worry about her appearance. And the same thing kind of was said about Bella. Like, I remember there was a scene where she came to school wearing like this giant like hoodie thing, and he was like, thank goodness that she wore that so that she will not tempt me. And why on earth would you put that in a book? I cannot believe that an editor did not look at that and automatically go, absolutely not. There were several things like that. I didn't think it was cool, the justification for literally like bringing WD-40 and sneaking into her bedroom. Like, well, I'm protecting her. Didn't think that was too cool. They all called Jasper Jazz. I hate that. They try to display how irrevocably in love Bella and Edward are while also infantilizing her. You cannot talk about how in love you are with someone while also referring to them as a child and that girl. Edward's level of jealousy that literally stretched to his own father while he was treating Bella for her head wounds. But let's be real, it was 700 pages long and maybe 50 of them I had a real problem with, so I call that an overwhelming success. It wasn't a hard read, it was an enjoyable read. I got through it quickly. It wasn't something that I wanted to put down really at any point, and I knew that even when I got to kind of a sticky spot where I was kind of slogging through, I knew that there would be something coming up that I was really looking forward to. So yeah, I think if you were a fan of the original saga, if you were a fan of Twilight, this is definitely something for you. If you come into this as a new reader thinking that you're going to enjoy it, maybe not so much. I think people enjoy it more so for the nostalgia factor rather than for the actual quality of the piece. But, you know, to each his own. But yeah, altogether really solid. I really enjoyed it. Every once in a while I'll read through the Twilight series just to kind of, you know, I like to read things from childhood. I love to read through Harry Potter and the Hunger Games, Divergent, you know, those things that were really popular when I was young, just for nostalgia's sake. I don't think that this book is going to be one that I add to the list when I do my rereads of the Twilight series. That said, if they were to make a direct sequel to Midnight Sun, like whatever the heck Edward was doing during New Moon, I would probably read it, and I think I would enjoy it. So that concludes this spoiler sesh / commentary / review. I do hope you enjoyed it. This was my first video of its kind. I think it's gonna be so long. It's gonna be like a 40-minute video. I just have a feeling. There is one thing that I do want to bring up, and that is that I personally did not know that the Quileute tribe from Twilight is real. As it turns out, they're currently raising money in a campaign called Move to Higher Ground. Much of their community is in a floodplain. They're trying to move to higher ground to keep their communities safe from tsunamis, floods, things of that nature. I donated the equivalent of that to the Quileute tribe. I believe it was like $15.98. I would urge you to do the same if you have the ability to do so. I have linked the Move to Higher Ground website down in the description so that you can visit that site and have a look, donate if you would like to. Other than that, that concludes this video. I do thank you for watching. Let me know if you enjoy this format, this length, better than some of the other videos that I've been doing, because I've been thinking of other books and series that I might want to do videos like this for. As well as some movies. I might want to try to do like some movie commentaries or something. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, leave a comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram. I do thank you so much for watching. Bye!